Good afternoon and welcome to this yet another installment of our very special program of Recount Watch. The People's Progressive Party has been bringing to you a series of discussions as it relates to the current state of play with the national recount for the March 2nd general and regional elections. However, we know why we got here to this is to the point of a recount. And as the recount continues, there is a plethora of peripheral issues and shenanigans that surrounds the recounting of the ballots from these elections. I have the distinct pleasure of having a very special panel with me this afternoon. And of course, you know that this program is a marathon program. We'll be continuing up until approximately 9 tonight. So I am honored to be the person opening the baton with me. Opening the baton with me is our Prime Minister-elect, Brigadier Retired Mark Phillips, PPPC candidate attorney Priya Manik-Chand, PPPC counting agent Mr. Sesnarang Singh, and joining us all the way from Maruka PPPC candidate Brenton Ashley. Ladies, gentlemen, thanks for being a part of this program.
Thank you.
Glad to be here, Michael.
Okay.
I'm happy to be here, Michael. Thank you.
Happy to be here, Michael. Mabaruma, not Maruka.
Oh, sorry, Mabaruma. I'll begin with the Prime Minister-elect, and I say so without fear or favor, Prime Minister-elect Mark Phillips. The most recent issue regarding the recount and yet another peripheral issue related to the recount is the penning of a letter by the chairman of GCOM, retired Justice Claudette Singh, to the Commissioner of Police to authenticate claims by the APNO AFC counting agents about whether or not individuals pointed to them in the observation report, whether those persons were here at the point of voting. We are aware, well, I must say that it is an initiative on the part of the chairman of the commission that has, in essence, caught many by surprise. PM?
To be in the program. Well, I must say that I am surprised because only last evening, in a discussion with one of our commissioners, we were led to believe that no such letter would have went to the
Commissioner of Police
under the hand of the chairperson of the Elections Commission. We were led to believe that that matter was not ventilated and agreed on at the commission level, that a letter should be written by the chairperson. I know Mr. Alexander was, in his last briefing yesterday, did mention that the Commissioner of Police, who's also the Chief Immigration Officer, was written to. And we more or less just cast that aside because it was unbelievable. Lo and behold, today we are seeing the letter. We are aware of the letter now, so I would say that we were blindsided, by this whole issue of the chairperson herself writing the Commissioner of Police. I don't know the legal aspects of it, but it appears to me that it's something wrong and should not have happened.
Priya, I want to bring you in specifically from the legal aspect of it, the validity of such a letter, and perhaps evidence gathered by the Commissioner of Police. Will he be acting outside of his remit?
So, Michael, thank you for having us and thank you for doing this program. I think it's really important so that the people of Guyana get facts because so much misinformation is out there by the AP and UAFC. Could I speak first as a citizen who was speechless this morning? I am never speechless. never speechless. And to have seen this letter made me, I was without words. I could not believe that the decent, law-abiding chairperson who committed to a fair process in this recount, especially in view of the fact that she knows the majority of this country is suspicious about whether GCOM can be trusted, would do something like this. But let's back up a little bit before we get to how lawful it is. How did we learn that a letter was even in the offing? Joseph Harmon, the campaign manager, a former minister and presently very involved APNU member, very involved as a member as well as in keeping the coalition in office, whether legally or illegally, said to the nation that the commissioner of police was written to and asked for certain information. All of us guffawed because it just sounded silly. And then, in the absence of Miss Yolanda Ward, who I think has been doing a fantastic job whenever she gets to go and do her work in front of the press, we heard nothing from the GCOM as a body or the Secretariat. But Mr. Alexander, the PNC's nominee on the Secretariat, came out to corroborate what Mr. Harmon said. The chairperson, at least by that time, I believe, owed it to this nation to say officially that she had written, to be slammed with a letter this morning, signed purportedly by her. I mean, she could always come out later today and say she didn't sign anything, and I would take back everything that I'm about to say here. But the chairperson, so we learned about this letter from one of the stakeholders who wants to stay in office and who this letter would serve. That alone really takes us down a path of whether, one, the letter is being sent fairly, two, the information that comes out of that letter can be trusted. How did this one party know about all of this? The other stakeholders didn't know. And I want to say that I spoke to 2 commissioners within the last hour, just to be certain, because it's so startling that the chairperson would send this letter. Did you know about the letter? So I asked them a couple of very straight questions. Did you know about the letter before it was sent? The answer was no. When did you become aware of the letter? They started talking about, there was talk about the letter over the last day or 2. So they did not know about the letter before it was sent. It appears though that Mr. Alexander knows about the letter before it was sent. The PPP commissioners who make up the Guyana Elections Commission did not know about that letter. When did they become aware of the letter? Over the last 24 or 36 hours. When did they see the letter for the first time? Today. Today they saw the letter for the first time, and that is unacceptable. We're not going to accept that and tolerate that. And the chairperson does not have it within her mandate or authority to write anybody alone, write any place alone requesting information. She is a creature of statute. She is also a creature of the commission, and the commission is a 7-member team. It's not a chairperson and Alexander and the 2 other government appointed commissioners. Now, let me just say, if the chairperson believes she could have written this letter, then clearly she had jurisdiction to come out and stop, which I believe she did, but she never did. She never actually did it. Come out and stop Mingo when we were in the building when he tried at Ashman's twice and succeeded 1 time to declare election results for Region 4. She could have stopped him at Kingston when he was not doing what the Chief Justice told him to do. She could have stopped the sloth that is going on there. So if the chairperson believes, you can't say at one point, I don't have authority to act alone and I want to be prudent with my power, but then you pick up and write a letter this dangerous to the Commissioner of Police. I don't believe she has the mandate, the authority to do it. And that is informed by my knowledge of the law. She cannot do it by herself. But more importantly and worryingly is that this action is coming over as partisan. It comes over as not being balanced and not being action and behavior that would benefit everybody in the process. It seems to be one-sided. The chairperson and the APNU commissioners knew about this letter. The PPPC did not know about this letter. The PPPC commissioners did not know about this letter. The nation first learned about this letter when Mr. Harmon, the campaign manager for the APNU, spoke about the letter. That should never, ever be how we are blindsided by information.
Having been written, Priya, are there any implications for the Commissioner of Police as he potentially attempts to act on the letter written to him by the chairperson?
Well, several things. And let's be frank, we're dealing with a situation where the majority of the people of this country need to feel as though it was determined in a fair manner. It was determined to give effect to the will of the people of this country. The police commissioner, and if you look at previous posts I made about him, I am a fan. I loved how measured he was when he first came on the scene. I love that he served his whole life. I like that he just seemed reasonable. But from election day to now, the commissioner has not done anything to give me confidence that he is unbiased. The commissioner sent his agents and his police officers into the Ashman building to tell us there was a bomb scare and that we must vacate. We didn't vacate, the building never blew up. They never searched for a bomb. That was a hoax that would have benefited one political party. The Commissioner of Police has not been fair in dealing with persons' political groupings. The PPP sees supporters and people who are sympathetic to the cause for democracy. Imagine that, you're sympathetic to the cause for democracy. Come under far heavier scrutiny and action by the police. In fact, 2 persons were arrested and charged. The commissioner has been silent on that. The police commissioner has been, the police force has been exploited, and I suspect that's what's happening to its members. I don't think its members want to do these things. Have been exploited to protect Mr. Mingo, both when he was declaring fraudulent results as well as after he declared them and whisked him off somewhere. Look, we speak to policemen and women all over this country, off camera, off the record, and they will tell you. They will tell you, and that's why I find it highly amusing when the APNU wants to claim the discipline services. They don't own them. These are human beings who want good for their family and their country, just like the rest of us. And they're doing what they have to do, not necessarily what they believe is right. If you ask me as a citizen about whether I believe the Commissioner of Police is capable at this stage of delivering unbiased information, the answer is no. I believe he would be politically partisan, and so I don't trust that. Now, if you ask me as a lawyer whether he's capable of delivering information that would be credible and not hearsay in a court, the answer is still no. The commissioner would have to show a plethora of things, one of which is he can't only show a list of who wasn't here. He would have to produce an authenticated copy of the whole list, or else it becomes documentary hearsay. The whole list, who was here, who wasn't here. The commissioner would be the first person to tell you that his systems do not permit, do not allow, as updated as they may be, as with the best will. He doesn't have all 10 ports in this country reporting in a timely manner to a central port where he can extract information that is credible. He's not in a position to give the information in this time. That by this time, I mean within the last 2 or 3 days, unless the commissioner wants to tell us he had these names before the last 2 or 3 days. And that would be a whole different matter that goes back to my first statement about him being partisan. He doesn't have the ability, with the best of intentions, the Guyana police force does not have the ability to give us that information in the 2-day period since they got the letter. So I'm sorry, he has neither the trust of the Guyanese people to provide information that would be non-biased, unbiased, and impartial, nor does he have the legal authority to be able to provide evidence that would stand up in court. The other thing is the question asked of the police force. Does Claudette Singh, does the commissioner have the ability to ask that question? If you're going to ask that question and tomorrow morning, or today, one of the PPP's agents stand up and says, we don't believe Granger is of the mental capacity required to have run for president, because that's an objection. If you want us to go far and be extreme, let's go far and be extreme. To run for president, you have to be compos mentis. It means you have to be sane. You have to be a Guyanese citizen. You have to be registered. Isn't that so? Supposing somebody stands up in there and says, we don't think he was sane when he ran. Is she going to investigate that now? GCOM has a record of who voted. GCOM has a record of who voted. GCOM must rely on its own record to decide who voted and who didn't vote. You can't go outside of that system now and investigate yourself, because that's what they're doing. GCOM is being a judge in its own cause. Now, if it is that, as Amna Ali said, people got up from the dead, they rose, they went and voted, and then they went back to rest. If that happened, it means GCOM, through its staff, allowed that to happen, caused it to happen, facilitated it, which means that GCOM did something wrong, either inadvertently or deliberately. The PNC is saying they did it deliberately because they're in cahoots with the PPP. If it is that GCOM did something wrong, then GCOM cannot investigate GCOM's wrong, because then it would be GCOM being a judge in its own cause. And the legal principle that's a fundamental bedrock of the law is that you can't be a judge in your own cause. And that is why you go somewhere else, namely the High Court, to determine whether or not these things wrong were done. And so the whole issue of the letter from Claudette, it's bad in law, going to the Commissioner of Police, him dealing with it would produce both politically partisan results as well as results that are unacceptable in the court of law, in terms of how he's going to present that evidence-wise. So it is just bizarre to me that this was even done, ever.
Since I want to pick your brain on this issue, I think it was Sanjeev, when we commenced this program yesterday, he spoke to the fact, even if we spoke about some possibility or discussions by PNC APNU, well, I'm not incorrect in saying PNC campaign chair, Joseph Harmon, his reference to a letter written by the chairman of GCOM to the Commissioner of Police. He spoke to the possibility of the chair of GCOM inserting herself as judge. And as a former judge, you're not sitting as chair of the Guyana Elections Commission in your capacity as a judge. So she is out of order, for want of a better word. Seth?
Yes, thank you for inviting me to this briefing. First of all, just two housekeeping notes. I'm at the ACC, so I will be leaving a bit early. But secondly, if there's any background noise, it's because there's many activities happening here. But the big question that's on my mind is, can GCOM investigate itself, as Priya just said, or is it the business of the court? And I think it was one of the experts who said, he who allege must prove themselves. Now, the allegation, who's made the allegation?
I think it was she who said so. Not right. I think. I'm absolutely certain.
She's a lawyer, so I will treat her accordingly as a lawyer.
But do we take therefore that the chairman has now abrogated onto herself the responsibility of proving on behalf of APNU?
Well, the question is, who made the allegation? The allegations were made by the PNC, as you aptly described them. It is the burden of the PNC to prove their allegation. It's not GCOM's responsibility. GCOM has a responsibility to tabulate and deliver credible results. Whether these allegations are made and they have any merit, then the PNC has all rights to approach a court in an elections petition and do what they have to do. But the bottom line is the mathematics has to be done before the English language is approached. And I think the chairman is mixing up her onions. She's now putting issues that is outside of her ambit into her pot. And rather, she should be focused on this recount process. She should be focused on this tabulation process. She should be focused on the tabulation certificates. She should be focused on getting her CEO to aggregate those numbers and present a report to her. And she should be focused on meeting with her commissioners and making a declaration, and then get out to the way and start preparing for the next elections, which is a local government elections. That is her business. She is literally meddling in something that is not her business.
All right, Priya, I see you very animated. You seem to want to jump right back in this discussion. Okay. All right. I'm gonna
Only to point out that that is why we were blindsided, as the PM-elect just said, because here's the chair saying publicly saying, he who alleges must prove. We know the allegations are coming from one political camp, 1 versus 12, one political camp. And then the next thing you see is the chair attempting through a letter to prove the allegations that she herself said the persons who allege it must prove it. So for me, it's very dangerous. The chair, I think, needs to get up almost immediately and assure the Guyanese people that no kind of, she's not about to fix the election for the AP and UAFC. That is how people feel. You follow what's happening on social media. We can't gather now because of our the crisis in the world, the pandemic. You can't see people on the streets, but you see how they feel on social media. People believe that that was another step for GCOM to hand the election to a party that did not win the support of the people. And she needs to clear that up and clear it up very quickly, that this nation should be assured that that is not going to happen. And we should send the message very clearly on behalf of the Guyanese people that we won't tolerate it. So the chairman better get up and speak to us about what it is she intended with that letter and why it was sent in such secrecy, and that you know, assure us that nothing untoward is happening.
Actually, for all intents and purposes, this seems to be just one of many issues aimed at discrediting the actual elections process. Many have shared the view that it's an attempt to discredit the process so fresh elections can be called, and delays and voters lists, and a plethora of shenanigans and issues raised to delay and have the APNU AFC remain in office. How is it, and I'll ask you as I conclude my question to unmute yourself, how is it received in Region 1? How are the residents looking at it? Of course, we know the People's Progressive Party Civic won Region 1, so there is a majority support in your region. Of course, you're currently at Mabaruma.
Yes, thank you, Gordon, for having me, first of all. And to begin with, the people of Region 1 are totally fed up of what is ongoing and the shenanigans of the AP and UAFC just to remain in office by fraud. We have voted on March the 2nd, and as you right, results of Region 1 would have shown the preference of the majority of the people of Region 1. And so while we know we are currently faced with this coronavirus, we, the people of Region 1, are looking forward to having this recount process completed as quickly as possible, and to have the PPP government installed so that the Progress and Prosperity Party would have campaigned upon so the people can be implemented so that the lives of the people of Region 1 and all Guyana can truly become better. Because for 5 years from prior after 2015 to present would have caused a lot of hardship and continues to have a lot of hardship, including in these times of crisis.
Okay, thank you, Brentnell. And I'd like to caution our audience that Brentnell is coming to us from Mabaruma in Region 1. So his audio may not be perfect because of distance, internet services there, and some other technical issues. But sis, I know you have to run in a few minutes. You're at the Artichon Conference Center. Could you just update us on the process thus far for today? Today being Sunday, as we have embarked on the additional 13 days requested. And I'll first ask you, sis, to unmute yourself before, yes, go ahead.
Okay, sorry about that. So I missed the question because, as I said, I'm feeding off of a telephone Wi-Fi. So can you just re-ask the question quickly for me?
I know that you have to go in a couple minutes, However, if you could bring us up to date on the current state of play with the count, more specifically, as we embark on the 13 days prescribed by GCOM for the completion of the process. What happened this morning? Any shenanigans of note?
It is a slow day at the convention center, but before I get on to what is happening here, I want to just mention something about Region 1, and I leave that deeper conversation for the Brigadier, incoming Prime Minister, to also add to. But I was just doing a little bit of research around Region 1 today, around this whole concept of the discipline services ballot. There were 40 discipline services ballots added in Region 1. Of that, 6 were rejected. And of the 6 that were rejected, and we have evidence of this, 1 of it was for want of mark. 1 single ballot.
No
so
stand.
it puts to bed, but this is a question I know the Brigadier will handle quite effectively. But the reality is what's happening here today. So far, when we came into the ACC, or the team came in, we started with an opening score sheet of 1,640 ballot boxes were completed, which leaves on the table 699 ballot boxes, or about 30% to go. There is about 143,000 valid votes still to be counted, approximately, because we will never know what's the exact number until we count it all. But what is the good news is that 310,895 valid ballots have been counted, certified, well, recounted, certified, and tabulated. So we're far ahead of this game. We were expecting this entire process to wrap up by Sunday. And as we all know, the PPP has a gigantic lead. I mean, I may at a later date reveal that lead, but it's a gigantic lead. And I think this is what has the APNU, if I may be permitted to use the word, bazodi. This is what has them bazodi. They're stultified by the reality. And this is after the fact of this. South Georgetown is completed. East Bank is completed. I mean, the PPP won East Bank, but South Georgetown is the strongest grouping of PNC support base, and it's completed and counted, and still the PPP is about 20,000 ahead of the PNC. So the reality is they have nothing of substance to hold on to, so that is why they're grabbing at all these straw items. So the game plan basically is Region 4, 6, 9, and 10 are in process. We started North Georgetown. Region 9 is scheduled to be wound up Monday, if not Monday, Tuesday, definitely. And then that box is expected to go to Region 4, so that there will be 6 stations in Region 4, 3 in 6, and 3 in 10. And as the others close down, they're all going to be dumped into 4. Now, the big elephant in the room for the entire PNC establishment is East Coast of Demerara. That is their nemesis. That is what they do not want to face. And that is why they're creating all of these conditionalities to delay the approach to the East Coast of Demerara. So, and I'll give you one last point. If we compare the old SOPs to the new SORs, we have basically spent days and days finding out that, like in Region 2, for example, the PPP lost 3 votes, the PNC lost 3 votes. And I'm saying the PNC because this APNU is just a big sham. So I'm going to continue to use that word. Now, you spent all these resources, all this time to find out that the variance is 99.9998%. Now in Region 3, same thing. The variance between the old SOP that was declared by the RO on March 4th and the new SORs that have been declared via the tabulation certificate, again, 99.998% accurate. So we have spent a lot of time, and it's made a lot of young people extremely annoyed at the fact that this country has wasted 26 days finding out what we already knew. The only difference that needs to be sorted out was Mingo Dingo numbers. Though, because as we established in the East Bank of Demerara, there's more than 7,000 fraudulent numbers pumped into the PNC numbers to inflate their numbers and to deny the PPP the rightful victory that they got on the East Bank. Let's let the facts speak. The PPP won the East Bank of Demerara, not the PNC, not APNU, not APNU AFC. It was won fair and square by the PPP.
Part of the PNC narrative is to say to its supporters that the People's Progressive Party is ridiculously claiming that they won Region 4, and the People's Progressive Party has never made such a claim. But I don't want us to exhaust this issue of joint services votes. And PM, I want to bring you in here on the issue of the joint services votes and the false narrative surrounding it by APNU AFC or cease and insist that we say PNC.
Well, you know, Michael, the PNC is thriving on the fact that traditionally the joint services, you know, would have voted overwhelmingly for them. And now they're trying to tell us that the joint services votes, right, was affected by GCOM not doing their work. But we haven't seen that. We haven't seen that. 8,295 thereabout members of the joint services out of a total of about 10,000, right, voted, and to date, I heard CS mention 310,000 votes were counted, and of the just under 3,000 rejected ballots, only 100 or thereabout was rejected as unstamped ballots. How can Mr. Harmon, how can the PNC tell us? And I saw a letter from Georgie Gomes, the head of the Guyana Legion, who's also expressing concern about joint services votes. And we know that the 100 unstamped ballots were not all for joint services votes. So the joint services votes, my conclusion, the joint services votes so far have been properly counted as part of the votes for the entire nation. We had, and we need to let the Guyanese people know, only 100 or thereabout ballots or votes were rejected for being unstamped out of a total of joint services voting of over 8,000. As you said, we have just over 600 more ballot boxes to be counted. I know there will be joint services votes in there, and perhaps what we will do from now on is every day give a tally as to the amount of unstamped ballots, the amount of ballots that were rejected for being unstamped, so the nation can see for themselves that the joint services votes were counted. Look, we're dealing with a desperate group of people who have lost the election. This recount is to prove that they have lost the election. You recall they start by claiming that they won the elections. That's because of what Mingo did. And Mingo should be before the court. Instead of writing a letter requesting the information on possible migrants who would have voted, we should have had a letter to the Commissioner of Police to start the investigation of Mingo's misconduct. That is why the commissioners and the chairperson of GCOM should start the investigation of Mingo. You know why? Because the coalition has changed their narrative. They're no longer talking about they have won the election and being silent on Mingo and his misconduct. They're now trying to discredit the whole process by raising a whole set of frivolous, allegations of irregularities. Mr. Harmon is a record of saying, but 80,000 votes are in jeopardy. It's obvious that they want to shelve this or annul these elections and remain in power, maybe another 2 to 3 years, so we could get another elections. And we are not in for that. We are committed, as we told the people, we are committed to seeing this process to an end. Their leader, who's silent and hiding somewhere, should come out of his foxhole and take command of the desperate statements being made by his co-leaders. Take command of the situation. They're taking this country down a rabbit hole. We don't need to go there. Their supporters are listening. Many of their supporters now are expressing doubt. They're questioning the narrative and the change in narrative from the coalition. Did they really win the election as they told us? The answer is no, they did not win the election. Because for every statement of recount that is submitted, that is tabulated, it is showing clearly, because of human errors, here and there, a 5 votes or so, the PPP is in the lead. I know they are afraid of the next 10 days, but it's inevitable. The 10 days, every day will continue to show that the PPPC story, the PPPC position is the right position. And as I said before, the PPPC did not arrive at this right position by sitting down and hoping that things happen. We went into every nook and cranny of this country. We campaigned, right? We went and meet the people. We shared our manifesto. We listened to their concerns, and the people overwhelmingly voted for the PPPC because they were fed up of the last 5 years. They had a lot of hopes. I had hopes too. Many of us had hopes in May 2015, right? But then, with every day after then, the people lost hope and they voted overwhelmingly for the PPPC. And all of us in Guyana must be vigilant and ensure that the will of the people is respected. Because without respect for the will of the people, we're nowhere. I will not take us anywhere. Democracy will ensure that we continue as a nation. And this is very important for all of us. We must dispel the rumors of this desperate cabal. They're holding on irregularities, frivolous irregularities. There's no irregularity to be held on to here. This is a quantitative process. The numbers are the areas that are going to give us the results are the numbers, are in the numbers, and we are seeing the numbers. The statement of poll in the possession of the PPP and the numbers on the statement of recount, they're coinciding, and that is telling the story of democracy in Guyana. The PPPC has won the elections, but the PPPC is not going to celebrate. We're going to be vigilant. We respect the recount process, and we will work with this commission, GCOM, to the end of the recount process and let the figures speak for themselves. And I wish to appeal again to the Chinese people and to the members of the discipline services that the PPPC is here to ensure every vote is recounted and accurately tabulated, because that is the essence of the recount process, and that will lead to a respect for the will of the people of Guyana. And democracy must prevail, and we will transition to a democratic government from what exists today. This is a threat to democracy, and we've endured it for over 1 year, starting with their with the no confidence motion. But these people, you know, they don't hear or they don't see. The writing has been on the wall for them a long time, as I said. 2016, we had the local government elections. They lost. 2018, another local government election. They lost again. And then they lost the no confidence motion, and they spent millions of dollars that could have been better used to improve the lot of the Guyanese people by having this matter in court. And it went right up to the CCJ, who told them, look, the Constitution here, what must I do with it? Based on the Constitution, you lost, and the clock is ticking. And they still want to hold on to, power, even after losing on the 2nd of March. However, we've long passed the time or the point of no return. We have just about, 16 days more to go, and we will rally through with the Guyanese people for the outcome and the declaration that is expected on or before the 16th of June. And I impress upon the Guyanese people to remain calm, right? Just follow the official line from GCOM. We want to hear the GCOM PRO. We want to hear the chairperson addressing this nation. And let us follow the official line as we await the declaration. Forget about the desperate actions, forget about the desperate statements that is coming out from Congress Place, because we're not hearing from the AFC. They're part of the coalition. We're not hearing from them. We're hearing from Harman. We're hearing from Norton. We're hearing from Irfaan Ali. We're hearing from Walter Lawrence, right? We're hearing from the PNC cabal, who wants to remain in power, who wants to continue undemocratic rule in this country. And we will not have that. And the people of Guyana are with us, because the people of Guyana believe in democracy.
I have my own views, Priya, on the attempt to appeal and to rile up the emotion of the discipline of the joint services in relation to the line which purports and intends to indicate to them that they may, in some way, shape, or form, they may have been disenfranchised. However, SACE is one of our accounting agents at the conference center. And on this particular subject, SACE, some parting words. I know you have to go almost immediately.
Yeah, well, I just want to say that what I've noticed is the PNC is talking about everything else except two things. One, the numbers generated by Mingo and how it was generated and what was generated. Secondly, what they're not talking about is the state of this economy. As everybody knows, the checking account to the Bank of Guyana is now negative $82.5 billion, almost 400 million US dollars in new debt that all came under Granger's watch. So they're not talking about the big nuggets in the game. They're not talking about this tabulation and counting process. They're talking about fringe matters. But what I want to say is that the age of this PNC occupation of Guyana is over. The majority of Guyanese have spoken, and their speech has been recertified, and we're seeing it live, where their words are being recertified here at the Otachang Convention Center. They're ready to carry on their lives, but they're being held back by a negligent regime that doesn't want to accept the truth. So what is extremely important is that the people continue to be made aware of this deliberate attempt by this PNC cabal to play with their intelligence in this national drama. And I'm calling on Miss Claudette Singh. I don't care what Mr. Granger does. He is irrelevant to the decision-making process right now. I am calling on Miss Claudette Singh to conduct herself in a professional manner. Let this tabulation process bring to an end. Declare your 10 regions with the 10 tabulation certificates. Merge them, make a decision at GCOM, do your declaration, and move on. Move on. This country has a lot to do, and the young people, what I'm seeing at this ACC is young people have taken over this entire process. And on that note, I need to go because we're starting this tabulation very shortly. Have a good day, everybody. Thank you very much.
Thanks for joining this program, Sis Narang Singh. counting agent of the People's Progressive Party, Civic. Priya, the issue of the joint services vote and an intention to appeal to the emotion of the joint services.
I think it's vulgar. I think it's vulgar, and it assumes that the men and women of the joint services are without a brain of their own, without the ability to evaluate and discern what is happening in their country. Look, Michael, let's be very frank. Most of many of the discipline services, the members of the discipline services, and I know many of them very, very personally, were very hopeful. Some elated, the rest very hopeful that this former army man had assumed office in 2015. And they expected some discipline in his government, the discipline they're accustomed to in their fields, some kind of humanitarian service. And what they saw was the opposite. Mr. Granger's government collapsed around him. He was unable to rein people in. He seemed not to be aware of what's going on. He moved in blatant acts of corruption, minister giving her a husband contract, contractor complaining that even then he was subcontractor, even then he wasn't paid by the husband. Person moved. Work not getting implemented, work not moving.
Problem moved.
So what they saw was that he did not serve the way they expected him to serve. And then in addition to all of that, pay you and your ministers a big fat salary and took away from these men and women who serve faithfully all the time their bonuses. They weren't served. So to assume, and that was, you could multiply that across the country. They won, and I put that in quotes because now I wonder about that, the 2015 election, which means that the AP and UAFC had to have some crossover votes. How could you in 5 years, you think in 5 years with doing nothing that you promised to do, you're going to improve on that? Well, if they had that thought coming, what did they see? Like Mr. Phillips just said, 2016, the people of this country said, we're not very happy with you. We're not very happy with you at all at the local government. The sort of poll of their performance. 2018, it was even worse. The people of Guyana rejected the APNU, AFC, PNC. By the time we came to the no confidence motion, and that motion, I invite people to go back and look at the debate. It epitomizes the service of the AP and UAFC ministers. Throughout the motion, all they were doing was laughing and vulgar and indisciplined. There was no response. Bring it on. And watch them now. You have to go back and see it. It's unbelievable that you're facing a no confidence motion. And the height of their presentation was, look how y'all got this place blocked up on Christmas Eve. People of this country are saying we want better service. We would like to see our people serve better. And it was treated very, very lightly. They were not reading the tea leaves over the previous 4 years. They did not realize how the disservice, the firing people at the sugar estates, the loss of jobs at forestry and mining, the 200 new taxes, they were not cognizing how that affected people. And they were listening to themselves and echo chamber how wonderful they were. And so that's why I think I'm not sure that they realized they would have to cheat, because somehow or the other, the AP and UAFC believed they would just win these elections by doing nothing, because they're entitled, of course, to power, apparently. But I want to be very, very clear. Mr. Granger assumed office in 2015. And in the 2015 election, this country had 4,000 rejected ballots. Because, Michael, in every single election, there are rejected ballots. The country had 4,000 elected ballots. About 0.96% of the ballots cast were rejected in 2015. It's not going to be any different in 2020. In 2020, there will be rejected ballots. The ballots are not, and I want to be very, very clear. When we say there are 4,000 rejected ballots, we can't know which are discipline services ballots and which are not, because the discipline services voted on what we call D-Day, Discipline Day. They voted before the rest of the country so that they could protect and service on E-Day. Their ballots were never stamped with every polling place has a peculiar number. Their ballots were not given that number. When it was intermixed, it was stamped with whatever that polling place is stamped with. And so there is no place in this country as yet, and I want the discipline services members to hear me. There is no place in this country as yet where we know that 30 discipline services ballots were intermixed and there were 30 rejected ballots. None, absolutely none. In fact, if you're unclear about that, Mr. Vincent Alexander, the APNU AFC commissioner, who would find it, I think, delightful to be able to point out that supporting fact that his party is parroting and spreading. He said very clearly, one, there is no way to know. Two, given the evidence before them that at no point did all the numbers of discipline services intermix get rejected in any polling place, he is unable to say, and the commission would be unable to say with any kind of clarity that discipline services ballots were not stamped. So it is absolutely propaganda to rely on, and again, they're reading the tea leaves wrong. You're assuming that these men and women that go out there in uniform every single day and bravely serve this country are somehow stupid. And you can fool them about this and somehow gain sympathies. And it's not going to happen. In fact, the discipline services got a name for what the APNU is doing. They're calling it scatter shots. That's what I heard the boys talking about, scatter shots. Apparently it means fire some shots and something hits somewhere. But we will be vigilant not only as a political party, but as a people. And you see, every time they fire a set of scatter shots, we come out with our shields and we block them from hitting any part of this country or the people of this country. And that's what we have to continue doing. But there's no way to know whether discipline services ballots were not stamped deliberately. And particularly, as the Prime Minister-elect just said, in all of the rejected ballots that have been identified so far, and let's clear up, why are ballots rejected? Because an elected didn't mark clearly where he or she wanted to vote, because an elector drew on the ballot paper, because an elector marked in such a way so as to be identified on the ballot paper, because an elector just scratched up the whole ballot paper, because the presiding officer didn't stamp the ballot paper. They're saying that the discipline services ballots were not stamped. We are saying that the rejected bundle of votes, which every election has, I told you in 2015 they had 4,000 of those, of the rejected bundle, only 100 or so, it might have gone up a little bit today and within the last couple of days, have been rejected for want of mark, where the PO did not stamp it. So let's put us to rest. We shouldn't be discussing this again, because I believe in the intelligence and discerning ability of the disciplines. They were entitled to a response. They were entitled to an explanation from us, and they've gotten it. And I don't believe they have this as a concern anymore. So for me, it is quite curious that, and the narrative continues to change. It's quite curious that the APNU AFC would do something that is so disingenuous, but also dangerous in its attempt to target a particular community.
If I could get us back to where, to why we are here. And it started at the office of the returning officer for district number 4, the returning officer being Claremont Mingo. And Ashley, I'm going to bring you in on this one. For us to reflect that you had 9 returning officers who executed their work without fear, without favor, without ill will, and in a very professional manner, and the recount is testament to the fact. The percentage of correctness demonstrated in the recount is testament to the fact that you had 9 returning officers, 1, 2, 3, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, executing their job professionally. And the problem began in Region 4 with Claremont Mingo. And I haven't gotten an opportunity to speak with you very often, and I want you to reflect on the mindset after the Georgetown debacle, if I could put it that way.
I didn't quite get the last part of your question.
I'm asking you to reflect on the.
First of all,
I think sales report to it as the Mingo Mangle.
Okay. Well, it's very much distasteful to blatantly try such a stunt um, on live television, not only in front of those that were present physically, but across the world. Because even to us here in Region 1, thanks to social media and modern technology, we were able to see what was unfolding on the basis at Ashman's building in Georgetown. That is, those actions are actions we've heard about growing up as young people. And we never thought the day would have come when we ourselves would have had a chance to experience uh, that level of undemocratic behavior happening, and more so, uh, persons seeking to um, seeking, seeking to have it as an acceptable behavior. And so we thank our returning officer that would have served here in District 1, even though that in the early part of this recount process, they would have tried their utmost to tarnish his image, his character as an individual. Our returning officer would have done his job professionally and in accordance to what is specified for him to get the job done in the region. And APNU AFC are sore losers, and they always like to look to blame others for why they're losing. Take, for instance, the local government elections of 2018, where we would have had only around 41 proxies, and they would have had over 100 or something, because 140 something proxies were issued for the local government. And because they lost, they would have claimed that the then returning officer would have sided with the PPP here again, because the poll books seemingly did not go at the time with the ballot boxes. They want to say that it was the PPP to be blamed for it, and that that the PPP was he was colluding with the PPP, which is totally unacceptable to say that a professional person like the returning officer that was assigned here to be involved with such behavior. And so I think that Mr. Mingo should have taken a page out of the returning officers of the 9 other regions who would have done their jobs professionally and transparently and credibly. Because when you look at the recount, the declaration of the recount for Region 1, for instance, you would have seen it is almost uh, the exact numbers that were given on the statements of poll, and also the declaration of District 1 when it was declared around about March 3rd to all of us who were present there.
Right. I'm going to ask all the panelists.
And so I think that I'm confident too that this is something that we should not have.
Go ahead, Ashley. There's some delay because of distance. There's a delay. Go ahead.
Yes. So what we would have seen unfold over the last, from March 2nd to present, especially in those few days at Ashman's building, that is something that we should always try to safeguard, not only for this present generation, but for the generations to come. Our foreparents or the founding leaders of our party, of the PPPC, would have fought over the many decades to restore democracy to this country. Eventually, in 1992, democracy was restored, and we would have lived in a country whose foundation was based on democratic principles. And to see in this modern era such kinds of practice is being entertained again is something that we must never allow to happen again. And that is why I must applaud the efforts, the commitment, and the sacrifices of all our leaders who would have been. It is. I would say it is fractured, but it's not gone beyond repair. And I think that that is the reason why we must ensure, stick to the end. And as Comrade Priya would have said earlier, is that to when they fire the scattered bullets around or the scattered shots, we must be able to shield them, defend, and also put to rest whatever they're talking about, so that when this recount process is completed, the will of the people of Guyana, the will of the people of Region 1, that 8,002 persons who would have voted, and even to those, because right now in our region, we have many persons who voted for APNU saying that we know we have lost, why our leaders don't give up, because they're making us feel embarrassed. And so it might be even more than 8,002 persons who would want to see that the will of the people, not only would want to see, they're confident that the will of the people will prevail, and that is to have the PPP get into government by on or before the 16th of June. And so we have to continue to work because, as I said, my region is one that's very distant from Georgetown, and the people are all eager to ensure that Dr. Ali gets into the seat of presidency, and Comrade Phillips gets to take up his responsibility that they have elected both of them for, and the PPP start doing what they must do when they get into government to make Guyana a better place.
You made a very important point there, Ashley, and it just caused me to reflect on something said to me moments ago before this program started. I went to a border market to pick up some fruits, and one of the vendors recognized me from doing these programs. And the point she made was that it was the PNC in power when you had to pry power from the PNC and restore democracy to Guyana. The PNC got back power, and again, it's an issue of a threat to our democracy. I don't want to belabor this point, but I just thought it's something, what you said reminded me of what a market vendor told me moments before this program began. I want to pull on your thoughts on this issue and to reflect again. I know we keep revisiting it, PM-elect. The issue of the Mingo Mangle at the Office of the Returning Officer of District Number 4. And I know you have to go in a few moments, so I'll just entertain you on this question and allow you to head to the conference center.
You know, because as I said before, we should be focusing on Mingo's misconduct, because the only thing that affected the credibility of this election is what Mingo did. There's no other allegations of irregularities that can amount to what Mingo did. Mingo is the reason why we are here almost 90 days after the election and cannot have a result, having to go through this recount process to have a results. And Mingo should be reported to the police. Mingo matter should be in the hands of the police. So that's what I like to say. Mingo issue, Mingo misconduct is the issue, the main issue here. And the APNU AFC commissioners should really have a huddle and determine what they want to be done with Mingo in the interest of respect for themselves as commissioners. Not to come up with a whole set of frivolous, allegations, right, to stymie the whole process, right? We don't want to go past the 16th of June. This process must come to an end, and we must have a final decision, as is written in the order, by the 16th of June. I think what is also important, it is time APNU AFC design some strategic communication package to address their supporters, to let them know that they have lost this election, because this is important for us as we go forward. We heard Mr. Rowley from Trinidad said it's not going to end nice, but I think we all have an interest in ensuring the safety of Guyana, right, as we take this process to the end. The APNU has a responsibility of now going out and reaching out to the people and explaining to the people that they were defeated. They lost the election. Not to have people confused now with frivolous allegations. So again, we expect to see some leadership from the APNU. As we complete the recount, start, and perhaps this should be the final change of their narrative. Change to our narrative of conceding defeat because the writing is on the wall, and start addressing your people. They already started by talking about inclusive governance, and whenever they're talk about inclusive governance, that is some element of defeat that they're facing. But come out plain and tell us. And don't hold this country to ransom. Mingo's places before the court.
Okay, thank you, PM. I know you have to leave us now, and I'll bring you in prayer on the same issue, just to reflect on the reason why we are here today. It continues to be a bothersome issue, and it is scary that we could have experienced such actions in this day and age, and it could have brought the nation practically to its knees to the point that we are today.
And that's where we are. What did America do yesterday? America sent people to in space. Barbados is talking about how, I'm talking about what other countries are doing. Barbados is discussing how they can move away from common entrance or NGSA so that you're not putting 10-year-olds through the test of their life. Barbados is discussing how, along with the rest of the region, they can reimagine tourism to cater for events such as COVID or other pandemics across the world. St. Kitts and Grenada are talking about how they could make their economies open using the new facilities we have, internet and so on, that would allow their tourism worth to be increased. What is Guyana doing? What are our young people engaged in? Our young people are engaged in fighting for a basic right that your vote must be counted. I remember saying, there's a young parent in my class, she's super mom. She works outside the home. She does very well with looking after her child. And on this group, she was saying, she has a grade 2 kid like mine. And she was saying, why can't my child go to school like normal the day after an election? This is a normal process. And it strikes you that in every other civilized place, it is a normal process. It's a place where you're supposed to, exercise your franchise, get back out into life, not even get back out. There should be very little pause while you're doing that. The AP and UAFC has brought us to this place again, where we have to struggle for this right all over again. Now, let me tell you something, Michael. The fighting for government and office was one thing. We should have been able to move on past the election, whoever lost. So this is not about political power and who must win an election. This is much, much bigger. It's much more fundamental. It's fighting to make sure that our fundamental rights are not taken away from us. It's fighting to make sure we stay in a democracy, that we live in a democracy where we would be recognized by our peers across the world as being people from a democracy. Because we haven't thought it through. I don't think everybody has sat down and internalize what happens in autocracies. Freedoms go, basic freedoms of expression, freedom of the ability to associate with whoever you want to associate with, freedom to demand and expect service. All those freedoms are eroded, and it's not in stages. When democracy goes, too much goes with it for us to sit back quietly, and we can't do that to our young people. When I look at people like Gail and the senior party comrades, these people have gone through that struggle before. We should have been sending people into space or discussing how Guyana, with her new oil economy, could be a leader, and not only an economic leader, but a leader in various fields where we could use our new opportunities and our new resources and so on to make sure people much wider than Guyana benefit. Look at what we're doing. We're engaged in fighting to make sure our vote is counted. And that is laid directly for me at the feet of the AP and UAFC. We see ministers all the time who, ministers who said, former ministers who, when they were in the opposition, said, we can't support the PPP because we don't believe we get enough time on NCM. Now coming to say, that was the big issue under the PPP. Now coming to defend stealing an election, they're totally untrustworthy, and many of those politicians will go. I want to say this though, that the PNC has supporters. The APNU, the PNC has supporters. I don't think the AFC has many, and I don't think the APNU as a collective has many either, but the PNC has a support base. And we can't forget that. So I believe it is important for the young leaders of the PNC, not the young ones who are so desperate to keep their party in office that they're making up lies and peddling propaganda because they have something to lose. And they have something to lose because they were benefiting from the miasma that was happening in the states, through the state corruption. But there are young people, good people in the PNC. We need to step forward and take up some leadership, because this that is in the party, this is not going to be last. This is the end for the people who tried, in my view. The end of the political credibility and career of the people who tried to steal an election. So there's space for young people in the PNC to rise up and take leadership there. But I'm not telling them what to do. I'm just pointing out that it would be in Guyana's best interest.
You made a very important point, Priya, and this relates directly to what Guyana should have been doing against what we are doing. And you also touched on the whole notion of leadership. And what is commendable is the level of leadership we've seen and we've been getting from our president-elect, Dr. Irfaan Ali, as it relates to the PPP's plans to introduce stimulus packages to the wider population in the face of the COVID-19 pandemic, opening up back the economy, flattening the curve as it relates to COVID-19 infections. How do we get Guyana back on the road of development? And most importantly, which is the narrative that somehow the APNU AFC PNC purportedly attempts to give the impression they are introducing an issue. This is a new issue. However, it has always been an issue for the People's Progressive Party while in government. And it formed a formidable aspect of our manifesto. So it's nothing new, and this is the whole notion of shared governance. However, my point is, as I introduced Adrian Anamaya, candidate for the People's Progressive Party, my point is that, Adrian, can I ask you, I'm sorry to do this, can I ask you to mute your audio? We're getting some feedback.
Yeah.
Sure. But we are being encouraged by the leadership given to us by our president-elect, Dr. Irfaan Ali.
So before I speak specifically on Irfaan, because I think Irfaan has extremely, but we'll talk about him in a moment, but the reason this period has been instructive and in a sense beautiful is that we saw not only the PPP has been very clear over the many years that we will stand up with the people of this country against autocratic behavior, against bullyism, against theft of elections, that Dr. Jagan spent his whole life fighting that almost. But we also see small parties, new parties. I want to say both new and small, not in a denigrating way. Small because when you're small, you don't have personnel and resources to do what some of these parties are doing. They're new and they're small, and these parties turn up every day at the convention center. And they go there and they observe and they speak up and they speak out, and they're not getting votes. So these are human beings, young people, most of them, who are turning up to do what is right only because it is right. Only because it is right. Versus the fossils on the other side, the septuagenarian David Granger, Mr. Alexander, and the other people, versus those persons who would see us in this cesspit, who throw us into a septic tank with just for power. And so, and in addition to that, you see people who might earlier in previous years turn a blind eye. Carrie comes saying, no, you don't swear in on a credible vote count, you're not going to be legitimate. The United States saying the same thing, Canada saying the same thing, the UK saying the same thing, the European Union saying the same thing, the Commonwealth group of countries saying the same thing, the OAS saying the same thing. So in this fight, the PPP has not been alone. The PPP has had company, and in one united voice, including with decent persons from the AP and UAFC, Dominic Gaskin, who came forward and said, I do not believe the numbers of Mr. Mingo. Supriya Singh said, I don't believe what's happening here. You can't do this to my country. And at the end of this process, when the time is right, I'm going to give back this award you gave me, because I don't feel like it would be proper for me to carry it and wear it. Other the Justice for All party from the AP and UAFC, the WPA, who have said that what the AP and UAFC has done, what Mr. Mingo has done, it is wrong. What the AP and UAFC is trying to do is wrong. So we're not alone in this fight. In fact, the only lonely people here are the AP and UAFC. They're the ones who have no company. They stand without any company in this attempt to steal democracy from this land. Irfaan Ali has made me very proud. And I think people look at him still and marvel for many reasons. One, Irfaan is young. And while he managed very effectively the ministries he had, he ran against the statesman president who said he had all this experience and said he had all this know-how, and he had, he was measured and steady, and he could give a steady hand. What was it? The slow hand on the country and take us forward. Can't come up. Look, today, ask Brent Null. Today, Santa Rosa is being swamped by, I saw an article by the COVID-19 cases. The pictures show 2 wooden beds with something looking like a fertilizer bag covering them instead of mattresses. Mr. Granger has been hiding. We saw him once in 2 months for this entire period while this country is in crisis. Walter Lawrence has come out with an order that cannot stand. The government has provided absolutely no resources to be able to help people. They tell you stay home because that is safe for you. And they parrot the PAHO recommendations without giving it. So the government says you'll be charged if you don't wear a mask, and they give not one single mask to any citizen in this country. Irfaan Ali has stepped up. He has done what the PPP knew he was capable of doing when he was elected presidential candidate, but he has done that on a national scale now. Under the Irfaan Ali period while he's waiting to be president, that he has organized to distribute more than 60,000 face masks to people of this country, all people of this country. He has distributed thousands of hampers, food hampers. Now that sounds so cliche, but what he's done is given people who don't have work and can't go to work because of COVID food so that them and their children could eat. He has considered what happens to our common entrance and our CXC exams that are pending right now. He has wondered and shown that we have, under him, there will be measures taken almost immediately. He has spoken relatively comprehensively as far as one can go, given that we haven't done the necessary consultations on the issue of power sharing. And so in a sense, they gave him a chance to shine in this period. And I could tell you this, I know some people who might not have been utterly convinced at election date who are now saying, aha, we're good with this boy now. We're good with this being our president now. And so they've given him that chance. So we've had a perfect, not only have we had many years of the PPP functioning in office and the APNU not functioning in the 5 years, we've also seen in this period post-election who have stepped up and who have not stepped up. And people are watching that. We have to remember it's different. It's a different world, Michael. We're living in a world where everything that happens, people get to see it. We're connected. We're now, information flows freely. And people are able to look for themselves, judge for themselves, and feel for themselves. When you have no food on your table and you cannot go to work because your workplace is shut down because of the ministerial orders to shut down, and the buses have stopped running, so you can't even catch your bus to go somewhere. And 2 weeks after you shut everything down, your cupboards are bare, and the PPP under Irfaan Ali sends you rice and flour and sugar and potatoes and oil, and you can actually feed your children. That means something. That we don't have to do it. We could claim, Irfaan could have claimed, look, I have no resources, we're in opposition, we're not going to, the state has to do this. He did not do that. He stepped up and he led, and people have gotten a chance to see that.
Adrian, I want to thank you for being a part of the program, and I want to take this opportunity to welcome you to this discussion. We've been dealing with a plethora of issues relating to the recount and, of course, peripheral issues surrounding the recount. I'm going to ask you to reflect on the reason why we're here, taking us back to the Mingo event at the Office of the Returning Officer of Region 4.
Yeah.
And before you respond, Adrian, we are about to be joined by Mr. Peter Ramsroop, advisor to the People's Progressive Party, in his bright orange shirt jacket. Adrian, go ahead.
Hey, Lord.
Yeah, so just to follow up before I deal specifically with what you asked me to touch on, with what Priya was saying about Irfaan. So it's shocking that in opposition, we have done more than the government has done. We're in opposition. Can you imagine that? Imagine if Irfaan Ali had the state's resources at his disposal.
I have to be honest. I have to be honest, Adrian. I'm not shocked. I don't know about you, Priya.
So if we would have had a stimulus package already, we would have had this country up and running already. We would have had things done and putting food on the table. So it's a real crisis out there. Not only here in Region 6, throughout the country. Remember, people have not been working, they have not been earning. The limited savings that they have is already exhausted. Big businesses are feeling the crunch, much less the small person who is at home for 3 months now, or two months, not earning a cent. And this government it's doesn't care, no compassion whatsoever for the people. Their own supporters in their own stronghold. We have done more for their supporters than they have done. You can't imagine that the level of disrespect that they're showing, the level of just gross neglect to everyone. And to focus now on your question, we have to give due props to, as Priya said, the newer parties. I would like to describe them as newer parties, and to the leadership that Irfaan Ali has provided to us. And remember, these people are there at the convention center, sacrificing the months, days, weeks of their lives, so that we could have a credible recount, so that we could have a democratically sworn in government, so we could follow the constitution, so every vote could be counted. So we have to really take our hats off and give credit to those individuals, all of them led by Irfaan Ali, the PPP team, and the non-PPP people, the smaller parties, who are all patriots, who are there logging it out to ensure that to come to you, what you asked now, what Mingo did in Ashman Building does not stand, cannot stand. And these people have all said, the thing is, remember, we went to the election, and these with about 10 odd parties, APNU and about 10 others, the PPP and 9 others, I think. And we were contesting against, everyone was contesting, PPP was contesting against these parties. But now you have a united opposition. And the thing is, they're all saying that the PPP have won the elections, that they've all denounced what Mingo did. They were all in the room like Priya was, in that room at Ashman Building, and saw firsthand how barefaced and crooked these individuals are. This corrupt cabal using Mingo now to try to change an election result, to rig it in front of our eyes, rig it in front of the diplomatic community, in front of 250 observers. And they cannot rely, they're not commenting on it. No one, Harman, nobody is commenting on Mingo's actions, the fraud that Mingo perpetuated twice, on 2 occasions, and both times he presented, tried to do a declaration. Now, and remember, Michael, it is clear, the fraud is only benefiting one party. It is putting votes, taking away votes from PPP, and then padding up the votes that APNU AFC got. Everyone knows that they lost the election, but Mingo now, using a spreadsheet that he manufactured from thin air, or perhaps it was given to him by Vola Lawrence and those of the cabal from Congress Place, they prepared these numbers and gave him and said, hey, this is what you have to do. I remember Vola Lawrence's signature appears on the declaration. And this is the numbers you have to work with. And this is how we are going to rig the elections in front of everyone and steal your vote, my vote, and install an illegal government. So that is the plan. So they're using Mingo to carry out this this unlawful, fraudulent act, and to the detriment of everyone and democracy in the process. Now, we can't stand by and allow it to happen. We can't stand by and allow them to get away with this, and they will not. We have to let our viewers know that they will not. We will prevail at the end. It's been a long fight, been a long battle. The PPP has been winning all those battles, whether it's in the courts, whether it's at GCOM, whether to get the recount, even to get us to this point, to get a recount. Everything we have had to claw and fight for. So nothing has been coming easy. So, and now we know that the GCOM machinery, or a lot of it, is compromised. We know that we may have a chairperson who herself is is biased, and has demonstrated that recently with this the letter that she wrote to the chief immigration officer, who is the commissioner of police. So, but yet still, we are there with the leadership of Dr. Irfaan Ali. We are going to persevere, and we are going to come out of this. So, because the numbers, as we made this point yesterday, Michael, what we are doing here with the recount, we can't change the numbers. The votes have already been cast. They are in that ballot box. So it's a simple process. It's of counting them now and ensuring that they were ascribed to the right party. So you can't go and import all these things with dead people and migrant voters and all of this nonsense, the foolishness that they're trying to do. There's no room for that in the law, and they're going to come now. You're going to see, I already see it starting on social media, come to justify these actions. But the commission has absolutely no authority to do that. Their job now at the recount is to count the ballots as they are cast in those ballot boxes and declare the results. And we have seen now they are matching the ballots that are being counted are matching the statement of poll that they were issued by GCOM to the PPP and all the parties. They are matching also the statement of recount. In some cases, 100% match. In some cases, 99.999%. So nothing will change. At the end of this process, it will confirm what you said, you know, what we all know, that the PPP won these elections convincingly. They are stalling, they are frustrating the process, but we have to let our viewers know that the end is near. The end is near, Michael.
Oh, thank you, Adrian. Peter, I'm going to bring you in here. We're attempting to reflect on the reason why we're here today. And I know you've been very animated in describing the Mingo issue in the past, but intermittently, you're taking it back to why we're here, engaged in this exercise, when we could have been well into the new government and advancing the cause of Guyanese and Guyana. I'm going to ask you to turn your audio on, Peter.
Yeah, listen to my comrade there just now. Yes, in describing, and I know Priya mentioned it too, you know, I worked at the tabulation center all day on the 3rd, all night on the 3rd, and I saw all the shenanigans the night of the 3rd. On the 4th, morning of the 4th, what was shocking, on the 3rd, APNU had sent their regular agents with their SOPs, and we were all going through the SOPs. We were all validating it with GCOM. And on the 4th morning, 2 people walked in the tabulation center that was not part of the 3rd tabulation. It was Ms. Valda Lawrence and Mr. Basil Williams. And both of them had a spreadsheet in front of them, sat on the desk with a spreadsheet. They no longer had the SOPs with them. So what was fascinating for me, seeing this firsthand, was how would they have spreadsheets? GCOM came in with a spreadsheet, and all the rest of us have SOPs. So it showed a corresponding effort between the GCOM and APNU to have a spreadsheet available. And when the numbers start calling, Basil Williams says, yes, that's on my spreadsheet. And Says Narayan, who was next to me, said, no, that was not the number. So we all know the fraud. And one thing the European ambassador said, and we have all said that, both local and international observers, and the EU ambassador said it best. He said, the only time something was not credible was in the tabulation process. In every other part of the electoral cycle, the word credible was used throughout the process, either by Basil Williams, by Granger, by Claudette Singh, by the political parties, by the international observers. The word credible was used. And the only time, as the EU ambassador said, that the word credible was different when it was in the tabulation center, where he said that process was not credible. And in the word credible, he also described election day. And I know you guys have talked that quite a bit. And so we're at this point of, of a stagnation of what APNU is trying to put in front of the population. It will not go. What they have to remember, and constantly as we listen to the rhetoric and we listen to the propaganda, no matter what they come up with, there is no path for the GCOM Commission not to declare our election results based on the recount. There is no path for Mr. Granger ever to be president of Guyana in 2020. And so with all of this said, we've got to get to the end of the recount. As the world knows, the numbers are adding up, as Adrian said, and ultimately Mingo is going to have to answer of where his spreadsheet came from and why did Basil Williams and Valda Lawrence have the same spreadsheet as Mr. Mingo on the 4th of March, and I was witness to that right there. I did not go home that night on the 3rd, and I saw all the events happen from the 3rd on to the 4th.
Okay, Peter, I raised this issue just before you came in, and this deals with the leadership that has been shown by
Before you go, Michael, before you go.
Go ahead, please.
This is just on a poster. The EU ambassador that Peter was just speaking about, Mr. Fernando Ponscanto, this is what he said. We said it very clearly. This tabulation process for Region 4 was not credible. It was not reflecting the will of the people. It has clearly followed a process which was not the right process. I saw it personally. I was there. I was in the tabulation center. This is why I said earlier we're not alone. We're not alone because people love the PPPC. I mean, that may be so. We're not alone because in a building with video cameras rolling, with Facebook Live features turned on all over, in a glass room. So I don't think people realize that. The room in which this was being done was made of glass. You could see in. Mr. Mingo, at the instant and instruction of the APNU AFC, attempted to declare results and then declared results that said that the APNU AFC won the election. And what is it they were saying? They're saying they won the election. When they went back to the recount, they said, we won the election because we got more votes than the PPP. You remember that? The people of Guyana want us. The people of Guyana love us. We have gotten more votes. The people of Guyana want the good life. Valda Lawrence on the night of the 13th thanked the good Lord and said how once God is for you, nobody else is against you. And she had a party celebrating. You remember they were dancing on the street? Mr. Granger on the 4th went to a street party again outside our campaign headquarters, and he said, we got more votes than the PPPC. The people of Guyana want us. I'm here to thank you for voting for me. That was the initial narrative. That was the initial conversation. That was what the APNU AFC was telling their people. Now they're saying something completely different. They're saying that people all across this country, numbering 90,000, by this afternoon it's going to increase, but when numbering 90,000, who went and collaborated in a massive fraud to both vote when dead people vote, as well as migrated people vote. They're saying that all the GCOM staff was engaged in this activity and involved in this activity. They're saying that all of their agents were engaged in this activity and involved in this activity. Christopher Ram, attorney at law and columnist, did a really nice piece in today's newspaper, and he was speaking of statistical probabilities. What is the probability of what they're saying? What is the likelihood that it's true? And he pointed out that in each polling station, so I'm going to read it for you. Each polling station has 3 GCOM officials, a presiding officer, a poll clerk, and a counting agent. I'm going to add in people like the police because each polling station has a police officer too. GCOM therefore had 7,017 officials in 2,339 polling places. Add to that 2,339 APNU AFC polling agents, and for the smaller parties, 233 agents, being 1 out of every 10 stations. That gives a grand total of 9,589 non-PPP persons. What is the statistical probability of not one of these 9,589 persons detecting a single one of the many thousands, 86,000 when he wrote, it's now raised to 90,000, who impersonated someone else or came as a skeleton and voted or had some other person vote for them? He goes on to ask about the statistical probability of having persons reminding us that the polling places, you had to make sure, these 90,000 people had to make sure they timed it just accurately to miss all the local observers, to miss the international observers, to dodge past the police and so on. What the APNU AFC is asking us to do is to believe that something that was highly improbable actually happened. He goes on to ask, what is the statistical probability of all 2,339 APNU AFC polling agents being so collectively incompetent, blind, dumb, and asleep, unable to detect or report a single case of the type of anomaly of which the APNU AFC counting agents are now claiming took place on so massive a scale that the elections are no longer credible? They're asking us to believe that these elections that they said they won, that they celebrated several times between March 2nd and March 5th, that Mr. Granger got dressed 4 times and had the army ceremonial people dressed, waiting to swear him in, that those elections are now so incredible, and that dead people and migrated people voted, and they should be, the elections are no longer elections that can be accredited and determine a legitimate winner. In the same breath, they're saying, but we should go back to Mr. Mingo's figures.
Because he won.
Mr. Mingo's figures, Mr. Mingo is the only set of figures, as you have been seeing, Region 1, Region 2, Region 3, all the way through, the figures are coming back in the same 5-6 votes off, one way or the other. Numbers that we got on election night. In fact, the PPP lost Region 7. We lost it with the same number of votes that we lost it on election night. We didn't expect differently. The PPP lost Region 8 by a smidgen. You would think that we'd be able to pick up that smidgen in the recount. We weren't, because the polling presiding officers were so dedicated in their jobs on that night that you're not seeing any big changes anywhere along the way. And so for them to suggest that it is all these anomalies happen, you're now forcing our partners and allies and ambassadors to come out and say, they didn't, I was there, I've been there. Nothing happened all day. The ambassador from Barbados to the Organization of American States told the members there that the only time the problem came was during the tabulation of one district, Region 4's results. That the election day itself, the activities were credible, ran smoothly, people were able to exercise their franchise. GCOM said that through its chairperson, David Granger.
And all of the APNU AFC leadership said that.
Said that, exactly. What are you talking about? The elections were fair and credible. So I think we're all on the same page that the elections were fair and credible, but you have a narrative moving from we won, we got more votes, to now, well, we didn't get more votes because dead people really voted for the PPP, to while dead people voted for the PPP and we didn't get more votes, we should go back to the man whose number gave us more votes. And that's the kind of scattershots I said are firing all over the place.
Peter?
Well, I mean, Priya mentioned 90,000. 2 hours ago, APNU put out a spreadsheet that says 132,007 votes are being affected. So they have jumped from 90,000 2 hours ago to 132,000. And again, I mean, it's comical. It's it's laughable, but it's a very serious narrative that they're putting out, to affect the population. But I've traveled around. I was in other places yesterday, traveling around. When you talk to people, and especially in APNU supporters, both in social media and in our country, they're not believing their story. They want to get on with their lives. We've got a health crisis that is flattening out the best way it can. We've got an economy to rebuild. People want their lives back. They don't want to hear this narrative. They don't want to hear about their vote wasn't counted. They knew their vote was counted. All of us went through a very rigid process, as Priya just described. And there's no way 132,000 votes were affected on election day, on March 2nd. So their rhetoric, their incompetence, and what Mr. Granger's got to sit down and just finally come to grips on. The reason we're in this recount, the reason why their narrative is so distorted, is the fact that the Guyanese population voted Mr. Granger out of office because of incompetence, because of failure. As we look at I know Adrian was talking about people not having work, and there's no money flowing, businesses are not making money, VAT is not being paid, the treasury is going broke, and all of this tells us that we need to rebuild our economy very quickly. And this election cycle has affected both the health crisis and the economic crisis the Grangers put us through over the last 5 years. When you look at all the taxes the PP talked about and having to be reversed, when you look at the stimulus packages, when you look at Dr. Irfaan Ali development plan, for the next few years and bringing all his team together to make something happen in Guyana. That is what we want to happen come June 16. We want the process to end. The GCOM Commission has no choice, no legal path to do anything different but to announce the winner. And the recount is being proven to show, as the world knows, as all of us in Guyana knows, there's a clear win by the PPP. This is not no 4,000 win or 5,000 win that APNU said they won in 2015. They claim that they only won again in 2020 by 4,000 or 5,000 votes. Hell no. The fact is the PPP won over 15,000 votes. That's in Guyana term a landslide, because there's no way Mr. Granger would have a path of being sworn in, and there's no way APNU has a path of staying in government, and they need to understand that as clearly and quickly as possible. Let's get on with moving the country along, and let's get on with the business of running our nation, and let the people get on with their lives and get back to normality.
Ashley, then Adrian. Ashley, first I want to pick your brain on the proposition of shared governance. It's something we dealt with before, and as I said early in this program, there is some perception, deliberate perception attempted to be given that this narrative brought to the fore upon recognition of defeat of the election by APNU FC is some new concept. It's something that we have embraced while in government, something we have embraced in our manifesto, the whole notion of shared governance. I'll ask you to turn your audio on first before you attempt to contribute. Yeah. Go ahead, Ashley.
Okay, Gordon. First of all, I think the narrative of developmental future and would also lead to the pathway of harmonizing our people as a nation. But I do not support, and many other persons do not support, the notion as being called upon by the APNU-AFC to look at that as a remedy to the ongoing problems that the country is faced with, or the blatant rigging that they were doing for the last couple of months. If they truly, as a party, let's just talk about them first, as a political entity, wanted to have shared governance and to ensure that everyone is included in the decision making, they would have had an opportunity from 2015 to now, and they would have lost that opportunity. For instance, and their selfishness as it relates to governance did not only stood at the level of the minister of the government, but it also took an opportunity in decision making. Like, for instance, at the level of the RDC, decisions were made and they were not acted upon, they were not implemented by the APNU, APNU, the APNU AFC appointed REOs, for instance. And that showed that they had no interest in shared governance. For instance, during their tenure, you would have heard like persons of Mr. Volkan speaking about ensuring people are empowered and ensuring that the governance structure is respected and so forth. But that was a farce. It's just mere talks, but nothing in reality. But I would have had an opportunity to read what our party proposes in our manifesto. And I also would have listened attentively to the president-elect, Comrade Ali. And we have heard exactly, we know exactly as a party which direction we would like to go and what direction will help us when we start this idea of shared governance. But as it is, where APNU is calling for shared governance, that's just a trickery into having people believe that they are interested in harmonizing Guyana. They had an opportunity and they wasted that opportunity totally in doing so. And if they had any thought of ensuring that Guyana, the governance of this country is shared, they could have done it by doing the right thing, conceding defeat, accepting that they lost the elections of March the 2nd, the opposition in the parliament, and speak to the PPP government about inclusivity and shared governance, but not when you would have taken up so much of time, frustrated Guyana and the Guyanese people, frustrated the electoral process, and now that the only way out of the crab hole that you found yourself in is to say, look, let's have shared governance, because you probably would think that people will forget what would have transpired. But in this point in time, I don't think that the PPP should entertain the idea of shared governance until this recount process is completed, until the declaration is made and Dr. Ali and the PPP is sworn into government and into the presidency. And then we could ensure, as civilized people, as people with a vision for national development, with an agenda to ensure that everyone is included, through consultation with the people, totally streamline how we're going to go about this issue of shared governance, and not only shared governance from a national level, but it must be able to be filtered even into the local democratic organs of how we can ensure that everybody's included and that we all work towards making Guyana the country it ought to be.
Thank you, Ashni. Adrian, do you see this as a scenario where someone says, "Oh, we lost executive power, but we will hand it over to you if you agree to share it with us"?
Exactly.
And the reason I'm asking the question this way, specifically and especially at press conferences, you tend to hear people who you could conclude to be surrogates of the PNC, asking questions along this line. Specifically insisting, I was looking at one press conference with Anil Nandlal recently, where it was almost insisted, and with Dr. Irfaan Ali, it was almost insisted that the required answer was to say, yes, I will have AFC members in my government, in my cabinet. Adrian.
No, but you hit the nail on its head. We are dealing with greedy, unconscionable bullies here. You went to a race, these were the ground rules, you lost, and you do not want to concede victory, right? You're coming up with all sorts of excuses now. And this one here, by the president himself, this talk of shared governance. The PPP won this election by over 15,000 votes. In 2015, when the GCOM declared that the APNU won by the smallest of margins by 4,500 votes, the PPP left. They packed up and they left government, left the offices, left everything, and just walked out. That is how you operate in a democracy. That is how normal, decent human beings who are patriotic operate, not this cabal that we have here. They are now trying to change the narrative, change the rules, and now the president himself is speaking of shared governance. You didn't hear of this from 2015. Now this is a recent narrative that they are trying to develop a few months ago, talking about shared governance. Now, how can you? We have always said that the PPP is, our position is this: we are a party committed to examining an advanced government structure, but you need a legitimate government to address this. You need a legitimate government to be sworn in, because it will require constitutional amendments, changes to the constitution. So that is the first step. They have to concede defeat, allow the new government to be sworn in, and then we will address the constitutional reform. And now look at the track record on that. Myself and Priya, we were both privileged to serve the party on the constitutional reform committee that was during the last parliament. So we sat there in 5 years. Nagamutu, this individual, Nagamutu, he was head of this committee. And needless to say, for 5 years, nothing was done. We hardly met. He didn't have a proper agenda, and there was not one single constitutional amendment that the APNU put forward. So they had an opportunity in 5 years to come up with a concrete plan for shared governance and make don't only talk about it, put it into law. Go and change the constitution and say this is it, and PPP or the other party, so this is it. This is what we are proposing, and let's go and get this done. Now, we look at what the PPP has done in 23 years. The amount of changes and constitutional reforms that we had over our 23 years in office is unparalleled. They didn't have one single one. Let me give you one example. It is Dr. Jagdeo, Bharat Jagdeo himself, who limited the presidency, the life of a president. So you can't have a president for life. So he limited that to two terms. Imagine that. The PPP did that. The PPP president did that. Limited. Remember, Barnum had this constitution where you're president for life. That was one serious change that we made, the PPP made to the constitution in our tenure. What have they done? Nothing. So now you can't come and negotiate with someone with a gun to their heads. Look, you cock the trigger and say, look, if you don't do this, this is what's going to happen. The country is going to burn. Our people are going to starve. We are going to continue to lock down the country. So that is exactly what they're doing. So they have lost. And I have, I mean, you must always have an open ear. You must always be able to listen to the other side. But these here they must show their bona fides. They must show that they are genuine. And the first step to doing that is to accept defeat, allow democracy to prevail, a legitimate government to be sworn in, and then we will address these concerns. You can't have it as you said in the question you posed. You know that you've lost executive government, and you are trying to bully your way and bully the president-elect into sharing governance with you, or else you're not coming out. So that is not how a democracy operates, and this is abnormal, and we cannot condone it. We can't condone that. We can't, and none of us on this side in the PPP, or even the other parties, the joint opposition, will support such a proposal coming from them.
Our time is almost gone, but Peter, I want to pick your thoughts on this issue before I ask each panelist to give a closing contribution.
Well, I mean, I would categorize it in a way that our campaign was run on inclusive governance. Dr. Irfaan Ali talked about an equal opportunity president, a president for all Guyana. Our candidates list was one of the broadest diversified lists that you can have across the country. Our ideology talks about development and economics and bringing harmony to our country, looking across Guyana. That's our ideology. When you look at Granger failed ideology of the PNC, I wouldn't want, and I would never recommend you bring a failed ideology into what we have proposed. You know, if they want to understand that development means taking care of all of Guyana, Dr. Irfaan Ali is committed to inclusive governance to take care of all of Guyana. If they want an ideology to talk about economic prosperity for an entire nation, Dr. Ali has talked about that in his plan for the next 5 years. So inclusive governance requires a broad sector of Guyana coming together, and that's what the PPP has done in this campaign, and that's why they have won the election. They have committed to moving forward to ensure the broadest of possibility exists, that every citizen of our nation benefit from any development, any economic plan that Dr. Irfaan Ali and his leadership team will put together. So the ideology of Mr. Granger and the PNC that has failed our economy, that has put dictatorship, that has failed to adhere to our constitution, that has bankrupted our economy, that's not an ideology that PPP will want to put into their plan. They want to understand how it is to come together and work together as a team. That's all possible through our legislative branch of Parliament. That's where we have our committees. If we go to the constitutional reform again, as Adrian talks about, all of those things need to be looked at. It's not just about changing the law to have shared governance, it's about understanding the ideology that Guyana needs to move forward. We have a great 5 years ahead of us. We have a development plan that will bring prosperity to our country. We have a development plan that will reduce our taxes. We have a development plan that will see businesses thriving. And that's how inclusive governance works. It's bringing society together from both the social, political, economic perspective and working across the country to bring that plan into effect and to be result-oriented and outcome-oriented. And Dr. Irfaan Ali has committed as the president, next president of Guyana, to have inclusivity, have we're an equal opportunity president, and every citizen will have a chance to participate. Every stakeholder will have a chance of participating in the decisions of our nation. And that's what we have to look forward to. And that's what our country needs to move forward. Not bad ideology, not dictatorial rule, not anarchy, not crap that they're coming up with the election and who didn't vote and voted. We want peace and harmony, and we want a development plan that is going to make our country better for all of us.
Peter, I beg to differ on one issue, and I think we should all disabuse our minds from any notion that there was actually a program in pursuit of an ideology of sorts. As one of our contributors yesterday put it, I think he referred to it as Jumbie-itation, something like that. That's and I shudder to think that there was some ideology that was being pursued. I see it. I've seen practices over the past 5 years, more or less as an ad hoc arrangement. I'm going to close this program by asking each contributor to give me 60 seconds of closing remarks. And I'm going to begin with Ashley. Okay, I guess we've lost Ashley. Adrian? I'm going to start with Adrian. Closing remarks.
Just, we can't have this notion of shared governments built on a platform and a foundation of rigged elections. So that's a non-starter.
Or duress.
And what Granger and his cabal have put this country through for the last 3 months is simply 4 months actually is simply unforgivable. The economic crisis that is being engineered by them, right? And the suffering and hardship that our people are going through right now, they are the ones to blame. And it's not only PPP supporters, all are consumed by this madness that is ongoing. And history will not treat him kindly, and the PNC kindly for this. This is going to be recorded. We have live witnesses. We are all witnesses, and Peter and Priya were witnesses to the raid. So this is being recorded, and history will not treat them kindly. And this should mark the end of this type of leaders and the PNC, this type of leadership in the PNC.
Ashley, I want to bring you in. 60 seconds, your closing arguments.
All right, Gordon, thank you again for having me, and it was a pleasure being a part of the panel today. Well, I want to say very clearly that in a matter of 16 days from now, we are confident within Region 1 and across Guyana that Dr. Irfaan Ali will be declared as the president of our country, and the PPPC will be the government of Guyana for the next 5 years. We look forward to ensuring that all our commitments we've made through our manifesto while we campaigned and garnered the support of our people, it will be implemented and fulfilled in a timely manner to the people across Guyana. What I want to say too is that, as Comrade Priya would have said earlier, that the PNC has to look at its future, because definitely their future is tainted because of what would have transpired over almost 90 days ago. And especially in the minds of our young people in this region, and I think across Guyana, in the mind of any right-thinking Guyanese, would not want to support an entity that does not speak democracy, because that is the pillars of our nation's foundation. And so I want to say that we're committed in serving the people of Guyana, and the PPPC is always the best party to be a part of.
Peter, some closing words?
Definitely, the old man is stuck to his seat. He doesn't want to leave office. I guess he's scared he won't be able to drive 18 cars anymore and have all that security around him. He'd have to go back to 2 cars or 1 car that he took away from the current opposition. So Mr. Granger got to go. The old man needs to understand he lost the election. The reason he lost the election because he failed the economy, he failed his supporters, he failed the nation. And as we look forward, and the 90 days that we have been in this process is sheer bullyism, sheer crap. That these people would not look across Guyana, given the health crisis, given the economic crisis, and say, you know what, it's time for them to move on. They bully their way all the way. They will not have a longer time to go. 16th of June, as Brenty said, we will be able to have the elected president, Dr. Ali, sworn in as the next president of Guyana. And what our population needs to look forward to, it is a strictly development plan, structural development in economics, structural development in governance, structural development in our harmony and across the nation, international focus, you know, winning the battle with Venezuela and our sovereignty issue with our lands. And so as we look forward, that's the plan that our people have to look forward, and the growth of our citizens through economics will be evident as the PPP put their plans in place. And that's why the process needs to come to an end. The bullyism, the craziness that Harman and Lawrence and the rest of them are coming out with doesn't fit with our population, and our population, again, wants it to end. And we look forward to a PPP administration that Dr. Ali, I'll repeat it again, as committed to our country as an equal opportunity president, regardless of your race, your color, your texture of your hair, the creed, your religion. He plans to make sure every citizen benefit from his plans. And that's what we have to look forward to come June 16, when we have a new president of Dr. Irfaan Ali.
Priya, some parting words.
If a patriot wants power, it has to be to serve. And to serve the people of this country, even if only it's an intention that is the said patriot has no capacity to implement. It has to be with an intention, an intent to serve. So if Mr. Granger wants power, stay in office, then it has to be because he wants to serve if he defines himself as a patriot. If Mr. Granger stays in power with an election result that is not credible, that is incredulous, that is not trusted by the people of this country and the international community, he's not going to be allowed to govern. He's not going to be allowed to serve the people of this country. That's not a threat from Priya Manik-Chan. That is very simply, the international community has said to him very clearly, except the count is credible, we will not treat you and the people you and the country you serve as legitimate, which means that this country is going to suffer. When the country and the president is not treated as legitimate, it's not the PPP supporters that suffer alone or the PPP supporters that suffer. It's everybody. So right now we have a good dry run of us having a pandemic where everybody has to stay home or should stay home, and we've been brought to some level of equality because of this worldwide thing that's going on. And it's a good dry run to see when you don't have people who can serve, what happens and how everybody universally punish alike. So Mr. Granger is not going to be allowed to to serve and govern this country properly or at all if the results are not credible. We know that once results are credible, the PPPC won these elections, again, not because I said so, but because the people of this country came out in large numbers and said, this is what we want for governance in our country. Once the PPP assumes office, the PPP is no longer the party that won office with a party agenda. The PPP will then serve Irfaan Ali and Mark Phillips, and their team will serve every single person of this country equally. That is our solemn promise. We will ensure in a special way that no community is left out. You spoke a lot about shared governance earlier, and I don't want to get into it now because I believe it's a hefty topic, and I'd like to touch on it sometime. But inclusive governance is very important to us. It is important that services are distributed and goods are distributed equally and equitably across this country. And we want to say this to the people of Guyana. Being in opposition for the last 5 years gave us an opportunity to see what sometimes you don't get to see when you're in government and busy with governance issue. And that is, we got a good chance to see how we could serve the people all over this country, Region 9, Region 1, Region 8, Region 7, Region 4, the nursery children, the primary children, healthcare, how we could serve better. And once we start implementing policies, as you know, the PPP does not implement for the PPP supporters, it's across the board. And every supporter, every citizen will benefit regardless of how they voted. So I want to assure AP and UAFC supporters that you could vote for whoever you want. We don't earn your vote. We consider it our fault, not your fault. We will serve you as equally as we serve the PPP supporters. Because once we get into office, Irfaan Ali is going to be president for all of Guyana. Mark Phillips is going to be prime minister for all of Guyana. And their policies will touch each and every Guyanese in every region equally and equitably.
Priya Manik Chan, Brentnell Ashley, Peter Ram Sarup, Adrian Anamaya, and we would have been joined earlier by Sis Narang Singh and Mark Phillips, our Prime Minister-elect. I would like to thank all of you for being a part of this extended program. Priya, you've spent all 3 hours, yourself and Ashley, with me. I'm honored, I'm pleased. I look forward to us having these discussions and other discussions in the future going forward. Join my colleague Lane at 8 p.m. tonight as we continue to update you on the current state of play with the national recount and to update you too with all the peripheral issues that surround the recount. I'm your host, Michael Gordon. Thanks for being with us. It's been a pleasure informing you. See you this evening when my colleague Edward Lane keeps you abreast. Thanks for watching.
Bye, everybody.